Paul Hudrick is with us now, and of course, he, like all guests, appears via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. They've won 6 straight, but as we've been saying, Paul, it feels like every night is more important than the night before, and this is a big one tonight because a loss tonight, you got Milwaukee playing Houston, so you know what's going to happen there. That would be a 2-game advantage over Milwaukee if you lose the game tonight. So this game tonight feels very important.
For sure. Like we talked about the other day, it's just, to me, if I'm Doc Rivers, I want to take care of this thing as soon as humanly possible. The Dallas Mavericks did you a huge favor last night beating the Bucks. So you got to take advantage. You got to take advantage of the fact that you have an easy. Say again?
Beating the Nets.
Yes. Sorry. Yes. So they did. It's you want to take advantage of it because you have the opportunity to do so. And again, like we talked about, this is all in their hands. This is a New Orleans team that has played better basketball, that does have Zion Williamson, but it's a team that you absolutely should beat, especially at home. So you have a golden opportunity, and you absolutely have to take advantage of it.
It's funny because I want to add, you wrote a piece today about the importance of Danny Green, and I encourage everyone to check it out at 973ESPN.com, and really just, how he has been. It's funny, I was just talking before you jumped on how he was in Toronto, wins a championship. He's in L.A., wins a championship. He was in San Antonio, wins a championship, and yet all those teams moved on from him. Heck, the Lakers sent a first-round pick with him, essentially, to move on from him. But here he is again on a team that is battling for the number 1 seed. Now, you wrote that, and at the same time, John Hollinger puts out his list of the most undervalued players in the league, and he came on that list at number 7. And I'm thinking to myself, all right, so what is his value to this team, and why do other teams keep getting rid of him even when they win with him?
Yeah, I mean, with the Lakers, Mike, I think it was because you remember, Toronto was just a simple numbers. They just couldn't pay him because he was so good for Toronto during that run. People forget he shot like 45% from 3 that year that they won a championship, and he was excellent for them in the playoffs. And they just simply couldn't afford him because they had to pay other people. They were trying to bring Kawhi back. That didn't work out. Danny Green got a nice payday from the Lakers. He got 2 years for $30 million. So I mean, that's a pretty good deal for him. So that's why he took that money, and he had another chance to win, which he did. So that's why he went to LA. And then last year, listen, I thought he was good up until the bubble. He really struggled in the bubble, which to me, I look at it like this: the bubble, Danny Green, and the Danny Green we saw to start this season, which was clearly not the Danny Green who we now know. That's the outlier to me. The guy that we saw in Toronto, the guy that we've seen win championships with San Antonio, that's the guy. That is the player. I think when he has struggled, that's the outlier. That's the guy. That's not who Danny Green is. So I think it's just like last year. The reason why the Lakers made that move to get this because they wanted Schroeder. They wanted Dennis Schroeder. They wanted more of a playmaker to play with LeBron, and they wanted more shot creation. Because I think if you looked at the Lakers as a team, the one thing they were kind of like the Sixers last year, and that they had a ton of size and they beat up on people. But they didn't have a lot of playmaking outside of LeBron. So I think that was the big reason for that move is they wanted to get a guy like Schroeder who could create more offense, and they thought that was better for them than Danny Green. If you're the Sixers, one, you were just trying to get out of the Al Horford contract, which mission accomplished, and then 2, to actually get a player in Danny who is, as I mentioned, it's an outlier when he plays poorly. He's a good basketball player, and then he's a veteran who has been around. As Doc Rivers and Daryl Morey have liked to point out many times this year, it's not a coincidence that this guy has played on 3 championship teams. He has contributed on those 3 championships teams too. It's not like he's just collecting rings. I mean, he's a part of it. So why is he getting undervalued? I guess because he's not. It's in San Antonio, they just moved in a different direction. And I think it's Danny Green too, because he's gotten better. He's gotten paid, and then some people might view him as overpaid because of that. So it's just a weird thing the way that kind of works in the NBA. But I'll tell you what, the Sixers should be very glad that it's all worked out this way because he's done a hell of a job. He's been one of the pieces that has really held this thing together.
Yeah, and it's funny because I'm thinking to myself, he's on a 1-year deal, right? So this might be your only opportunity to kind of capitalize on having him. This might be just a one-and-done opportunity to have a player like that because I'm imagining, I don't know that they can bring him back. and then Thybulle essentially steps into that role next year.
Possibly. That is kind of the way it kind of has to work in not just basketball, in any sport. When with a salary cap, you have
also be
to
34 next year.
Exactly. You have to make plans for the future. You have to look ahead. And we see Matysse Thybulle and the growth he made. I just saw Brian Seltzer, who works for the Sixers, put out today. Matysse Thybulle is second in the NBA in steals. He's like 250th in minutes per game. So this is a guy who is just making such a big impact. If he could just shoot a slightly below league average from three.
Yeah. I think
he is
will.
He's a start. And I do. I agree. I think he will too. He is a starting caliber player in the NBA. So, so that's the other thing you have to weigh with Danny Green. Now, then again, to your point, Mike, he's 34 years old. They would have his bird rights, so they could kind of sign him. It's like kind of tricky to explain, but basically they could go over the cap to sign him.
Yeah.
So it's not impossible. And if they win a championship, you think maybe he'd be more likely to want to come back. If he seems to like it here. He seems to, like playing for Doc Rivers. He seems to like the players he's playing with. So you never know. I wouldn't completely close the door on that. But yeah, at the same time, this iteration of this team is not going to be the same. So you do want to try to take advantage of it.
Yeah, the bird right thing is key. I didn't remember that they have his bird right, so they can sign him and you can go over the cap with that. That's a possibility then if they like him to bring it back, and then he doesn't have to play as many minutes maybe at 34, and he's still around to kind of mentor because he's seemingly – that's another thing is all these teams keep getting rid of him. It's not like he's a jerk. He's not like a locker room kid. In fact, he's probably what pulls a locker room together for the most part. Paul Hudrick, let me get – did you watch the net game last night?
I did.
All right. So tell the people, if you're watching that Nets game and they're losing to Dallas last night, what is not – I get it, Harden's not there, so it's hard. But what is not clicking or what is not there for them? I literally was just having this conversation at lunch. There was three of us sitting there, and it was like, when Harden comes back, it's going to be so different, and it probably will be. But you watch that last night, and it's like they just only have two guys that can score, really. And they're going to have a third who's pretty darn good, by the way.
Well, and it's crazy to think about because when they made the Harden move, the thought was, well, how, there's only one basketball. How are they going to make it work and all that? And it's fair things to point out. But at the same time, there's no mistaking. Kevin Durant is arguably the best scorer of his generation. Kyrie is one of the better scoring guards. I would say he's a top 10 at least as far as, just creativity and being able to take people off the dribble and score. Neither of those guys are playmakers. They don't make offensively. They don't make the players around them better. That's not what they do. What James Harden does, and he took so much crap when he was in Houston because he shot so much. People call him a ball hog and all that stuff. People don't realize he was a double-digit assist guy when he was winning the MVP and when he was at his peak. So when you put him with other players like that, not only is he making Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving better, he's making Jeff Green better. He's making Joe Harris better. He's making any of the guys, even like a Nick Claxton or any of those kind of guys that he can run a pick and roll with. He's making Blake Griffin. He's making them better. So I think that's what they're missing right now is they're missing – James Harden was basically playing like a true point guard role for them. And Kyrie is not a true point guard. That's just not who he is. Incredibly talented, incredibly gifted, and dangerous as all hell, but he's not a playmaker for others. He's generally looking to score, whereas James Harden sees the whole floor and he's looking to get his when he can, but he's also really good playmaker and really good at elevating the play of the guys around him. And I think that's what we're seeing right now is they just don't have that. And it's a lot of one-on-one basketball with KD and Kyrie, which, they might score a lot of points and that might win them some games, but there's going to be nights like there was for them against Dallas. And like we saw the 2 games against Milwaukee, where it's just a lot of isolation basketball and it's not easy to win that way.
Yeah. Now tonight they'll take on New Orleans. So they had some challenges with this team the last time they played. Do you anticipate similar challenges? Now, if memory serves, I don't believe Ben Simmons played in that game. Am I right about that?
No, he did. He played. No, they were. I believe they were at full strength that night. I could be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure that was before he was out of the lineup. That was a game where, and Doc Rivers even said it, he thought his team came in mentally weak. They weren't ready, and the Pelicans aren't that good of a team, but they are physical and they are strong. They have some athletic players. And I think that they weren't ready for that. And they flat out, I think they took New Orleans lightly. Zion killed them. Zion was magnificent in that game. And I don't think the Sixers were mentally prepared for him to kind of do that and go downhill and be that force. With that said, Brandon Ingram's out tonight. I think Steven Adams is doubtful. So, I mean, they're a little dinged up. But you can't take them lightly. When Zion, because of how well Zion is playing and because of the force he is, you cannot take this team lightly. And I imagine that a couple of things. One, Doc Rivers, I'm sure, has really seared that into their heads to remember the last time you played this team and you took them lightly and what happened. And then two, I'm sure a lot of the players, these guys, they remember stuff like that. They remember losing to New Orleans in New Orleans. And I'm sure a lot of those guys feel like they owe the Pelicans one after that game. So I would expect and they're home, right? They had a day off after a weird 3-game road trip and they are home. So I expect them to come out hot and I expect them to come out fired up and ready to play. Is that going to happen? I don't know, but that's what I would expect.
I do. Yeah. And by the way,
I also think, look,
they didn't play in the fourth quarter of the game the other night either.
No, yeah, exactly. So they are well rested and they know what's in front of them. Like, they're not stupid. They want the 1 seed. They have made no secrets about it. They are scoreboard watching. They saw that the Nets lost last night. Like, they see what's in front of them. So that's another reason why I think they come out and I think they give a much better effort against New Orleans tonight than they did back a few weeks ago.
Here's an interesting something somebody brought up earlier today. I don't remember where I heard it, so I'd like to give them credit, but I can't remember. But the fact that Steve Nash is a first-year coach, is having the first-year coach the right guy to have with these 3 guys and then not a whole heck of a lot else in this situation?
It's certainly a fair question to ask. Like, if I'm looking at the top 3 teams in the East, the guy I'd probably want is Doc Rivers. Out of Doc, out of Steve Nash and Mike Budenholzer. Budenholzer has struggled to get over the hump. He's been a great regular season coach. He's led teams to the second round of the playoffs, but not any further. So, and then Steve Nash is in his first year coaching ever, not just coaching in the NBA, coaching ever. So,
and his lead assistant doesn't exactly preach playing defense.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. It's like, and then when you factor that in, Mike, with the lack of continuity with the players, because guys have not played a lot together. Guys have been in and out of the lineup. James Harden has been out for quite some time, and that matters. That's not nothing. And no matter how talented you are, that matters. It matters for defensive rotations and kind of like the offense. I think they're going to be they have so much talent. I think they'll be fine. They'll figure it out. But defensively, they should be concerned. I don't know how that's all going to work out. Like I said, part of what makes the Sixers good and what makes the Bucks good as a defensive team is they have the cohesiveness. They've worked together all season long. They're really good at help. They're really good in their rotations. And I don't know that the Nets are going to, they're going to have to figure that out by the first round of the playoffs, because second round of the playoffs, it's looking more and more likely they're going to be taking on the Milwaukee Bucks.
Yeah, and that's a big key and by the way, they're only a half game up, and that could be the Bucks on the road where they just lost twice.
Right.
So that could be another interesting storyline. 7, 8, 9, 10, very interesting down the stretch. 6, interesting. 4 and 5, interesting. I mean, it could be all jumbled up. So we don't have any idea what these matchups will look like. So next week, when Paul is back for Inside the Sixers, we may or may not have a better indication of what some of these pairings will look like. But that's all for Inside the Sixers today. He's Paul Hudrick, at Paul Hudrick on Twitter. And go check out his piece on Danny Green, which a lot of people have already done. We appreciate that, at 973ESPN.com. All right, Paul, feel better, man.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it, man.
All right, that's Paul Hudrick.